All right, so we are discussing Chapter 5, Lesson 6, Slope-Intercept Form. So the objectives for today are to write a linear equation in slope-intercept form and also to graph a line using slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and get started. So you have seen that you can graph a line if you know 2 points of the line, right? We did that with the x-intercept and the y-intercept. We graphed the x-intercept, we graphed the y-intercept, we connected the dots. Also, just any two ordered pairs, right? If you plot two ordered pairs, you can connect the dots and form a line. So another way is to use the slope of the line and the point that contains the y-intercept. So this is the second way, is using the slope and the y-intercept. You can actually graph a line if you know those two pieces of information. So let's go ahead and look at it. So with this example 1, we're going to graph a line given the slope and the y-intercept. So what you have to know is first, you always graph the y-intercept first, okay? So that's important. You graph that first. After you graph the y-intercept, so the y-intercept is 4, and you just graph a point. Now from this point, it's almost like your pen is stuck in mud or goop, and it can't be released until you graph the slope from this y-intercept point, okay? So once you graph that y-intercept point, your pen is stuck in mud. Okay, so the second thing that you graph is the slope from the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 4, I graph that, and remember the slope, to talk about it, that's the change in y over x, right? The rise over the run. So we have 4, and then from here, this is negative 2 over 5. So we can interpret this slope as either 2. So you have two options. The first option is to think of it as negative 2 over 5, okay? And the second way to think about it is 2 over negative 5, okay? Negative 2/5, you can either think about it this way, where the rise has the negative or the run has the negative. So if the rise has a negative, that means you're going down. If the run has a negative, it means you're moving to the left. So I think I'm just going to use this first option because I don't really have much graph paper going this way. So yeah, I'm going to use this. But you can only, when there's one negative here, you can only put the one negative in one spot. What you cannot do is this. You cannot do negative 2 over negative 5. Do you know why? Because what's a negative divided by a negative? Well, it's a positive, and then the number ends up being 2/5, which is not the same thing as negative 2/5. So you can't do it that way, okay? You can just use a negative in either the top or the bottom. So, okay, we graph the y-intercept first, and then from this point, we're stuck, and I'm going to go down to 1, 2, and then over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where I'm going to plot my next point. And then I just connect the dots, and boom shakalaka, there you have it. We have a graph of our line using the y-intercept and the slope. Okay? And it goes on and on forever in both directions, so make sure that you go ahead and show that. Let's look at the next problem here. So 1a, again, I'm sorry. We're going to graph the y-intercept first. That's negative 3, so negative 3. This is always first, this is always second. The slope is 2, okay? That means it's 2 over 1, which means our change in y over our change in x, or our rise and our run, right? So y-intercept's negative 3. From here, I'm going to rise 2, 1, 2, and then over 1. And that's my slope from the y-intercept, and I just connect the dots, and there we have it. There's our line. Perfect, perfect. All right, let's look at the next example. So you're going to go ahead and graph this line with the slope being negative 2/3 and the y-intercept being 1. So here's my friend the pause dragon. Remind you to pause your device. Go ahead and graph this, and when you get done, press play, and we'll go over it together. All right, let's see how you did. So here, Our y-intercept is 1, so you graph that first. And then from here, we got negative 2/3. So I'm going to think about this as negative 2 over 3, okay? So from this y-intercept, I go down to 1, 2, and then over 3. 1, 2, 3, right there. And so if you have that, you did it perfect. If not, go ahead and erase and make sure that yours graph and work looks exactly like mine. Put the arrows on the end. All right, if you got that right, you did a wonderful job, and I'll see you in a little bit for example 2.